In this video, we will analyze the story of the movie Frankenstein, written and directed by Guillermo del Toro. We start this analysis from the title of the source material, the novel by Mary Shelley, a 19th century English author named Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, and develop our argument through proper understanding of the story by understanding the myth of Prometheus on the one hand, and on the other, the milieu of the modern human and what it led to, the postmodern human. In the first part of this analysis, we will examine the myth of Prometheus from ancient Greece. This myth is full of ambiguity. One of its most important ones is its ambiguous relationship with the myth of Pandora. We will also have to analyze the relationship between these two myths. Considering these two myths and their interconnection, we will see a clear link with the Jewish myth of Adam and Eve, which is also mentioned in the story of Frankenstein. Examining these three myths will help us understand the importance of modern Prometheus in the title of Mary Shelley's novel. And if we are to have a Prometheus in modern times, who will necessarily be modern, must create an immortal man, something God did not allow humans to attain. This creature, as the end of modern man, has characteristics that make him a postmodern man, a word not yet coined in Mary Shelley's time, but she anticipated such a man as a product of modernity. In this analysis, we will show how this postmodern man has the 6 characteristics of demigod, godlessness, loneliness, ugliness, suffering, and will to live. Postmodern man is demigod, in other words, a godlike being, which is the other side of godlessness, because his God is dead, and it is in his own hands to determine his essence. The creatures becoming God and after some time godless result in nothing other than loneliness. Just as postmodern man is lonely, a man who is more estranged and isolated than all the men before him. This man is ugly and aware of his ugliness because he knows that instead of a divine origin, his roots trace back to a lineage of the dead. This ugliness, along with eternal loneliness, has no benefit for him except eternal suffering, which is the existential characteristic of this ugly, lonely, eternal, and godless being. Despite all this, postmodern man has a will to live, because life is the only thing left for him. The story of Frankenstein begins with a Royal Danish Navy ship on its way to the North Pole. The ship is heavily icebound and the captain's men seem to be having no luck getting out of it. In the meantime, they encounter an injured Frankenstein and are attacked by a huge, terrifying creature that demands Frankenstein's surrender, but they apparently manage to drown him under the ice. This story is narrated in 2 parts. In the first one, we hear Frankenstein's version told to the captain. Victor Frankenstein is the son of an aristocrat and a famous and strict doctor, who despite his capabilities cannot prevent the death of Victor's mother. This incident makes Victor decide to conquer death. He becomes a skilled doctor, but is expelled from college due to his unauthorized research in reanimating the dead. Henry Hollander, who is an arms merchant, offers Victor unlimited resources and an abandoned tower for his experiments. Victor sets about creating a new human. In the meantime, he falls in love with Elizabeth, his brother William's fiancée, but despite his efforts to win Elizabeth, he is rejected every time. Victor collects body parts from executed criminals and left corpses in battlefields to assemble a body and use the power of lightning to generate an electric current through the corpse's lymphatic system. We find out that Hollander, who is dying of syphilis, in return of his sponsoring Victor's project, asks him to be put inside the incarnation and therefore escape his imminent death. Victor, claiming Hollander's body is too rotten to be put to use, rejects the idea, and it leads to a fight and consequently Hollander's death. Victor finally succeeds and the corpse he assembled comes to life, which is called a creature since it is given no other name. Out of hatred or fear, Victor locks him up in the vaults. Meanwhile, Elizabeth encounters the creature and becomes interested in him. Victor, terrified by what he has created, tries to destroy it by setting fire to the tower. Here the creature, getting himself on the deck, enters the cabin. In the second part of the movie, we hear the rest of the story told by the creature. He frees himself from the tower before the explosion and escapes free. He then hides among the gears of a mill. There, he is called the Spirit of the Forest because of his secret help to the family of the owner of the farm. He makes himself present to the blind old grandfather of the family, and the old man teaches him to read and speak. After returning to Victor's tower, the creature finds out that he was created from the body parts of the dead. He also learns Victor's address. When he returns to the old man, he finds out that the wolves have torn him apart. He fights with the wolves. The old man's sons arrive and, believing him to be the one attacking their father, shoot him dead. But he comes back to life. After that, he finds out that he is immortal. When the creature arrives at Victor's place, it is the wedding night of William and Elizabeth. He asks Victor to create a mate for him, but Victor refuses. The creature attacks Victor and injures him. Victor, trying to kill the creature, accidentally shoots Elizabeth, who has come in between. The creature takes Elizabeth to a cave, where she dies in his arms. The creature escapes and Victor follows him, doing his best to kill him. When the creature's story is over, Victor apologizes to him and calls him his son. The creature calls him father and forgives him. Victor dies. The creature frees the ship from the ice and it changes direction back home. The creature faces sunrise alone. The story of the movie Frankenstein differs in some important details from Mary Shelley's novel titled Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, but in its main theme and significant parts of the story remains faithful to it. Although here we take the title of the book The Modern Prometheus as the basis for our analysis, it is actually an analysis of the story as presented in the movie. The title indicates that the story wants to introduce Frankenstein as the modern form of Prometheus. Understanding everything modern depends on understanding its corresponding precedent. If we are to understand modern Prometheus, we must first take a brief look at the myth of the ancient Prometheus, one of the most fascinating myths from Greek mythology. The myth is mentioned in the most important sources of Greek mythology, namely the Theogony and the works of Days, both by Hesiod. Also, some of the most important tragedies of the Golden Age of Athens are dedicated to Prometheus. Fortunately, one of them, Prometheus Bound by Aeschylus, has survived to us in its entirety. Since the myth contains numerous ambiguities, including its profound relation to the myth of Pandora, and because the movie's plot deliberately draws itself closer to the story of Pandora, it can help us understand the plot better. As we will discuss their connection to each other, we'll see that these two myths are similar to the myth of Adam and Eve, a myth belonging to a different culture, which is also alluded to in the movie. Thus, this analysis attempts to first examine the concept of the Prometheus-Pandora myths, and then their relationship to the Adam and Eve myth, and show what a modern alternative to Prometheus and his craft would be like. Prometheus, son of Iapetus, comes from the first generations of the ancient Greek gods, the Titans. Initially, he fights on the side of the Titans against Zeus in the war between the Olympian gods and the Titans, but he then joins Zeus and helps him defeat the Titans and become the supreme power among the gods. Prometheus, more than anyone else among the Greek gods, is close to the story of man, the distinction of man from God, man's progress, and even his creation. According to Theogony, at a ceremony of the gods hosted by Prometheus, he tries to deceive and humiliate Zeus. While serving an ox, he has Zeus choose between two portions, one with the unpleasant intestines of the ox on top and fat and meat underneath it, and the other with fat on top and the bones of the ox underneath it. Zeus gets angry and thus denies fire from humans. But Prometheus steals fire from the workshop of Hephaestus, the god of blacksmithing and industry, and gives it to humans. When Zeus sees fire among humans, he becomes infuriated and determines punishment for both Prometheus and humans. According to Prometheus Bound, Prometheus's punishment is to be chained to a mountain in the Caucasus for eternity, and that every day an eagle eat his liver, which is regenerated at night so that the eagle eats it again the next day. Man's punishment, however, is nothing but a woman, who based on the works and days is named Pandora, meaning all gifted. All the gods contribute to Pandora's creation by gifting her with many ornaments, and send her to Epimetheus, the brother of Prometheus. Despite Prometheus warning his brother not to accept any gifts from the gods, Epimetheus accepts Pandora. Before Pandora came, all the sorrows and misfortunes of mankind were locked in a jar, and thus mankind lived in peace. Out of curiosity, Pandora opens the jar, and all the misfortunes, pains, and sorrows of mankind come out to invade human life. And thus, the vice of the gods' gift is revealed. Only one thing remains in the jar: hope. In Prometheus Bound, Prometheus says, "I gave hope to the hearts of men, and in addition to hope, I gave fire to men." He also considers many sciences and industries as his gift to humans, from learning languages, comprehension, and reasoning, to medicine, astronomy, mining, shipbuilding, and many others. In addition to all this, Prometheus claims that Zeus wanted to destroy the human race, and while none of the gods opposed Zeus's plan, he stood up and saved humans from complete destruction. According to some accounts, as to Ovid, the creation of man is attributed to Prometheus. According to most of these accounts, it was Prometheus that created man from clay or mud. If we consider the stories of Prometheus and Pandora in conjunction, the result is very similar to the myth of Adam and Eve, the story of man, the emergence of woman, the descent from ease to suffering, and many other details. What is clear in the story of Prometheus is that he gave fire and with it industry and knowledge to humans. And since knowledge is a divine thing, revealing it to humans who are non-divine is an unpardonable sin. In Genesis, God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden and gave him freedom to eat freely from any tree except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, warning that if he ate from it, he would die. But the serpent persuades Eve that this was a lie, and if they ate from the fruit of the tree, not only they would not die, but their eyes would open and they would be like God, knowing good from evil. So Eve ate of the fruit and gave some to Adam. Soon after, their eyes opened and they realized they were naked. So they covered their genitalia with fig leaves. God realized that they had eaten the forbidden fruit, and that is why they knew they were naked. God therefore punished both Adam and Eve. Eve was condemned to give birth in pain, bear children, and obey Adam, while Adam was condemned to suffer by obtaining food from the earth and make bread by blood, sweat, and tears. Furthermore, God expelled Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, fearing that they would reach for the tree of life, another forbidden tree, and by eating from its fruit become immortal. According to the story of Adam and Eve, two divine things belong to God: knowledge and immortality. Adam and Eve attained the first, but were expelled from the Garden of Eden before reaching the second. This duality is not, of course, mentioned in the story of Prometheus. But what causes the punishment of both humans and Prometheus is the disclosure of knowledge in the form of the divine secret of fire. Now, if in the context of the story of Adam and Eve, that is the Judeo-Christian thought, a new Prometheus were to come, commit a new mortal sin, and reveal the secret of the gods, that secret would inevitably be immortality. This is why we said the movie had an eye to the story of Adam and Eve, because the creature in Mary Shelley's novel is apparently not immortal. But immortality is the most important distinction between gods and humans in Greek mythology, and the only remaining secret of God that man has not yet attained in Jewish mythology. Wouldn't the disclosure of this new secret make man a god? Although pre-modern man is heir to Adam's first sin, modern man is sinful in every way, being demigod, the acquisition of new science, the breaking of divine traditions with the Enlightenment, and most importantly, the means of transforming pre-modern God-fearing man into postmodern godless man. We can observe this sinfulness in various aspects of Frankenstein's personality and behavior. On the other hand, in Frankenstein's era, that is the modern era, it's a long time since the gods have become idle and no longer interfere in human affairs. Instead, by acquisition of science and technology, man sees himself as creator and believes that his recent remarkable progress in knowledge has enabled him to know everything and has given him unlimited power in industry and craftsmanship in all fields. In the 19th century, medicine was not only no exception, but a pioneer. Frankenstein is a clear example of this modern man aspiring and claiming to be a creator. However, modern man is not yet God because firstly, he is mortal, and secondly, he has not yet become godless, because for all that he has become enlightened and avoids religious superstition, he still believes in God. Although this man calls himself the sovereign of nature, he still considers himself a part of it and not distinct from it. He considers himself divine and beautiful, just as the pre-modern man thought. Unlike pre-modern man, however, who saw life difficult and found himself in suffering. Modern man sees himself on the threshold of prosperity and happiness and thinks that the era of human suffering has ended. However, it seems life qua life and the will to live have not yet taken hold of him, and instead he boasts of greatness, dignity, sublime and truth. The story of Frankenstein is the story of the recreation of a new human being, this time by modern man. Victor, as a modern man, creates a new human being, someone who is different from himself and has transformed beyond modern man. And for this matter, here we call him the postmodern man. Frankenstein's story does not present a profound and acceptable example of postmodern man when it comes to the creature, but it contains significant points. Here we will try to demonstrate 6 characteristics of postmodern man regarding the new human being, the creature. Postmodern man, whether he believes in God or not, is godless. In the face of transition from modernity to postmodernity, God has lost all his main roles and functions, and is no longer supporter and abettor of man, and man therefore must be in charge of his own affairs. This idea reminds us of the story of the death of God in Nietzsche's philosophy at the dawn of postmodernism, with the difference that Nietzsche's God died from pity to his creatures, but here Frankenstein, the creator, from cruelty toward himself and his creature. With Frankenstein's death, the creator dies and the creature remains immortal. While both modern and pre-modern man believe that their nature is predetermined by the will of God and nature, postmodern man is existentialist and believes that determining his nature is of his own choice. The creature is the hero of his own life, and before behaving in his nature, he must seek a way to determine it. Not only modern man with his creative role sits in the place of God, but postmodern man, by reaching legendary powers, gains the standing of demigod. Moreover, what emphasizes the creature being a demigod is his immortality. The immortality of the creature does not root in the book, of course, and was added in the movie. In fact, the relationship between creation and created is reversed here. Instead of God being the creator, the creature becomes the creator. Modern man, having prepared the conditions for the death of God, begins to create God. This characteristic is well demonstrated when the creature, godly and unnoticeably, provides godlike assistance to the family in the forest cabin and is called the spirit of the forest, or when it frees the ship stuck in the ice with its supernatural power. The godlike nature of the creature is demonstrated in its resurrection, when we see him on the cross. At the end of the story, Frankenstein calls the creature his son, and he in turn calls his creator father. Pre-modern man and modern man saw his only distinction from other creatures in his dominion over them, and therefore considered himself part of nature. Meanwhile, he had God or gods who did not leave him alone. Moreover, Adam had Eve, and humans had Pandora. In the story of Adam and Eve, God offered all the animals to Adam to see if he would find a companion, and since he could find no companion, he made Eve from Adam's rib. Pandora, too, although at first given as a gift for vengeance, becomes man's companion. Postmodern man, however, not only sees himself more estranged and isolated than ever, but he also has no God to appease his loneliness. This man is alone, but his loneliness means absolute freedom. He, as Jean-Paul Sartre says, is condemned to be free. The creature is the only being of its kind, eternal and distinct from all others, the only God in a godless world. Moreover, the only ones he loved, the old blind man and Elizabeth, also die. Frankenstein also rejects his request to create a mate for him. In the book, Victor creates a female companion for the monster, an unnamed bride, but destroys the bride before it is completed, which further enrages the creature. Another change in the movie, comparing to the novel, is Elizabeth's relationship with Frankenstein. While in the novel she is Frankenstein's wife, in the movie she is his brother's fiancée. Since, according to most stories, Pandora is the wife of Prometheus's brother Prometheus, the movie's emphasis on Elizabeth's glass box on several occasions is clearly an emphasis on its connection to the story of Pandora, especially since what is trapped inside the glass is a butterfly. to remind us of hope that is left in Pandora's jar. However, instead of being all gifted, Elizabeth is all denied, and with her death, the creature's loneliness is complete. Pre-modern man and modern man sees himself as similar to God, and therefore beautiful. In Genesis, God says that He made Adam in His own image, the pinnacle of creation, and that he should rule over them. Postmodern man no longer has a God to see his beauty and compare himself to. Instead, he has found out that, based on evolution, he has developed from species that were previously considered inferior to humans. On the other hand, he has gained a new understanding of his subconscious and searches within himself for desires that were previously considered foul and driven by external temptations. And for these reasons, he is aware of his own ugliness. In the story, we see that the creature also realizes the ugliness of its own nature when it discovers how it was created and realizes that it is nothing more than an ugly semblance of corpses. The creation of the creature from corpses is not illustrated in detail in the book, but the book emphasizes this ugliness in another way. According to the book, Frankenstein wants to create a beautiful creature. However, when it comes to life, he is so disgusted by its ugliness and calls it a monster. Overall, the image that Del Toro creates of the creature is much less ugly than Shelley's monster. While the creature in the movie is shown to be innocent and clean, the book's monster is savage, murderous, and abusive, and not only kills Elizabeth and William, but also causes the death of others to hurt Victor. In a scene, we see the creature on the cross before he is resurrected. The creature then speaks of suffering, the suffering that comes from his eternal loneliness, ugliness, and godlessness. Perhaps postmodern man, like the creature, finds himself in ugliness, loneliness, and godlessness, and that is why he suffers. Although modern man thought for a while that human suffering had ended and promised a glorious future for humanity, this dream, at least for those who in the process of transitioning from the prior belief to the new emptiness, was shattered, and they found themselves in suffering. Pre-modern man was in suffering too, however, not in the kind of suffering that postmodern man finds himself in. It seems all the humans in history suffered. Prometheus suffered, Adam suffered, Eve suffered, and everyone was tired of suffering. In Kafka's words, everyone grew weary of the meaningless affair. The gods grew weary. The eagles grew weary. The wound closed wearily. There remained the inexplicable mass of rock. The legend tries to explain the inexplicable. As it came out of a substratum of truth, it had in turn to end in the inexplicable. Humans have always been living, and the postmodern man lives as long as the pre-modern and modern man. However, it is remarkably true that life is a discovery of postmodern man. Although the postmodern man does not see life as gloriously and beautifully as the modern man, he welcomes life even more than the modern man and wants life for its own sake. Perhaps because he has no other good purpose left to tie his life to. There is no God left, no afterlife, no truth, no greatness, and no sublime. Although according to the book, the creature has no will to live and even decides to burn himself out of frustration, in the movie he emphasizes that despite all the hardship and loneliness, he wants to choose life. And of course, since he is eternal, he has no other choice but to live, as in the final scene of the movie, we see him metaphorically looking at the dawn of the day. The idea of accepting life is evident throughout Nietzsche's philosophy, especially in Nietzsche's emphasis on accepting fate and the theory of the eternal return of the sane. In Nietzsche's words, was that life? Well then, once more. This was our take on the story of Frankenstein. What do you think? Did you find it interesting or truthful? Did modern man become a monster? What other characteristics of postmodern man can you name for us? We are eager to receive your opinions in the comments.